Rules of Order. I will start off this evening with our Dakota Land, Water, and Peoples Acknowledgement. The Metropolitan Council acknowledges that the land we currently call Minnesota, and specifically the 7-county region, is the ancestral homeland of the Dakota Oyate, who are present and active contributors to our thriving region. As a part of the Metropolitan Council's commitment to address the unresolved legacy of genocide, dispossession, and settler colonialism, and the fact that government institutions, including the Metropolitan Council, benefited economically, politically, and institutionally after the forcible removal of the Dakota Oyate, the Metropolitan Council is dedicated to instilling land, water, and people commitments in regional policy. These commitments support the Dakota Oyate, the 11 federally recognized tribes in Minnesota, Ho-Chunk Nation, and the American Indian communities representing over 150 diverse tribal nations that call the 7-county region home. With that, we'd like to extend a warm welcome to all members of the committee, as well as members of the public joining us online. This meeting will proceed until 8 p.m., and we appreciate your participation. For those watching remotely, we are streaming live on YouTube, and our meetings take place on the third Tuesday of the month from 6 to 8 p.m. All right, thank you all for being here. We'll begin with introductions. I'm pleased to welcome Tony Tolliver, Equity Officer 3.
So we actually introduced him last week. I apologize about that, Carmen. So we can go straight to roll call.
All right, so let's do our roll call. So before we proceed, we'll conduct our roll call to establish quorum. As a reminder, members should have received handouts via email. All meeting materials are also accessible on the Metropolitan Council website. Tori, would you like to do roll call, or do you want me to do it?
Yeah, I can go ahead and do roll call really fast. So I'll call the roll call, and if you are here, just come off and say yes or no. Zachariah Abdullahi, Councilmember Tony Carter, Councilmember Dr. Tyrone Carter, Carmen Foster, she's here, Mitchell Hansen, Samira Issa,
Here.
Michael Lucini, Councilmember Yasmin Osman, Councilmember John Pacheco, Anita Yervina Davis, Markia Knight, Astrid Benedetto.
Here.
Perfect. We have not established quorum. So when we do establish quorum throughout the meeting, I'll keep track of that, Carmen. And we can go back to the approval of the agenda. The approval of the minutes. But you can go forward with the approval of the agenda. Is that correct, Lila? If we have an established quorum, we can the approval of the minutes still?
If we have not established quorum, we would not be able to approve the minutes.
Right. Okay. So we'll move to the approval of the agenda.
All right. So our second, order of business today is to approve the draft agenda. Are there any additions, deletions, or modifications that any of our members would like to request before we proceed? All right. Since there is no suggestion changes, I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Samira or any other members can approve the agenda just by saying aye or nay.
Aye.
Actually, we need a motion first. So Samira or Astrid, if one of you would be willing to move the approval of the agenda, or Markia, sorry.
So moved.
Do we have a second?
I second it.
Thank you, Markia. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Do we have any opposed? All right, so with that, we will approve the agenda. Thank you so much. I will skip over approval of the minutes and we'll move on to our public invitation. We now invite members of the public to address the committee. If you wish to speak, please note that you must have pre-registered online prior to this meeting. Each speaker will have 3 minutes to share their comments. Is anyone present or online who has registered to speak during public comments?
No one has registered.
All right. So seeing no one registered, we will proceed to our next item on the agenda. We have our Imagine 2050 outcomes measures. We're joined today by Sarah Nelson, who is an outcome measures researcher, community development, and Krista Reba. I apologize if I pronounced that wrong. Krista Reba Terse from Strategy and Product Design Manager with our Community Development Research area. So for this segment, we are pleased to welcome our speakers for this topic. Each presenter has 20 to 30 minutes to present, and they will be followed by 15 minutes for questions from the committee. Before we begin, just 2 reminders. For the record, presenters, please state your name and your title, especially because I'm pretty sure I butchered your names. I apologize sincerely. And then for committee attendees, please write down your questions and hold them until the question and answer period. And please do not use the chat function for questions, as we do need those to be live and accessible. And you'll be able to do that when the floor opens. So with that, our presenters, the floor is yours.
Good evening. Thanks for having us here this evening. Let me get my slides fired up here. Always a briefly terrifying moment. Okay. Can folks see and hear me okay? Great. And are we seeing title slide yet? I am on my end, but I know there's a delay. Okay, wonderful. Wonderful. Okay. Thank you, committee and chair, for having us here this evening. For the record, my name is Kristen Ribatures. You're very close. I'm a research manager in community development, and I'm joined this evening by my colleague, Sarah Nelson, who is a senior researcher specializing in outcomes and measurement. So that's the introduction that is required for our meeting minutes and for the record. And typically, I know I tend to just jump right in and launch into slides. And I know I've done that before in my past presentations, even here to the EAC in past years. But I hope the committee will indulge us for just a minute or two to offer a little bit more background about Sarah and I, just in the spirit of relationship building, and also that we'll be back a couple of times throughout the year to work with you on this topic of the outcomes measurement program. So we thought may as well jumpstart the process of getting to know each other just a little bit. So with about me, just a little bit. I've been here at Met Council. This will be my 13th year. And I've held several positions, all in community development research, but I am a research manager of the strategy and product design team within the department currently. I grew up in Detroit, Michigan, and then moved to Chicago for college, and then ended up living there in total about a decade. Then moved here to St. Paul, Minnesota in 2010. And most of that time I've spent living on the west side of St. Paul, which most people tend to think is just Dakota County, and that there's not this small bit of St. Paul on the west side of the river. I came to research, community development research, through sociology, mostly focused on quantitative methods, social determinants of health. But in the last 2 or 3 years, I've kind of grown into a new area of work, which is web and information design, to better support the department that I am part of, and how we share our work and ensuring that research is relevant and accessible and effective for all that we hope to share it with. when I'm not doing regional government research things, my hands are typically in the dirt, or my feet are walking around St. Paul. My husband, Chris, really loves movies. And so by extension, I also see a lot of movies, and I welcome any or all references or recommendations, particularly in the action or horror genre. So that's just a little bit about myself beyond my work and title. And Sarah, why don't you do your intro?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Thanks for having us here today. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, you sound good.
Okay. I'm Sarah Nelson. As Kristen mentioned, I am a senior researcher specializing in outcomes measurement. I'm originally from the Twin Cities, and I've spent most of my life here. I grew up in Chanhassen, and I went to school at McAllister in St. Paul, where I studied economics. After graduating, I spent a couple of years in Phoenix, Arizona, with a job where I did research focusing on public contracting with small and minority-owned businesses. But I moved back to Minnesota, both to be closer to my family and for grad school, where I studied more economics, but this time with a focus on public policy. I joined the Met Council's community development research team just a few years ago, and most of my work so far has been in developing and supporting this outcomes measurement program that we're here to talk about today. Outside of work, I'm often walking my dogs, playing with my dogs, or loading them up in the car for some sort of adventure. When we adopted them, I had no idea how much a little pup would take over my life, but here we are, and I love it, and I love them so much. So yeah, I will throw it back to Kristen.
Thanks, Sarah, and thanks everyone for indulging us a little. I just think we tend to, kind of get ahead of ourselves a little bit here, and we didn't want to do that this time. Also pictured as my little pup that I just adopted 3 weeks ago, so I'm deeply immersed in that, like everything is puppy lifestyle right now. So I'm right there with you, Sarah. And then hopefully we'll, learn about all of you committee members, new and those that will be joining the committee soon, over the presentations and the time that we work together on this program. So in talking with Lila and Tori about today, and Tony, I should say, also was able to join us in planning today's conversation. We learned that you all, the EAC is expecting new members. We weren't sure if they would be joining us today or soon. And also that, it's been a little while since EAC was presented with information about Imagine 2050 and the plans within it. So given that context, tonight's presentation is a pretty high level introduction to Imagine 2050. It's just the essentials, like what it is, what it includes, because it helps really to define the scope of our outcomes measurement program that we lead and that we'll be talking to you about multiple times. So we're going to start with that first chunk there is that high level introduction. And then my understanding is that some presenters that authored policy plans from across the council are being contacted to come and present more about their plan, so that you get a more in-depth and detailed version than I am certainly capable of or will be doing here this evening. You want the policy experts to be talking about their work and their plans, not us. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. After that general introduction to Imagine 2050, Sarah will provide some information and overview of our outcomes measurement program, formally established last month through an adopted amendment. She'll talk about the program's commitments and structure and what we thought about as we developed that initial slate of measures. And just to be clear, we're not planning to really dive into measures today, specific measures. Though if you have explored those, in preparation for today, seeing that this was on the agenda, or when we did our invitation during the public comment period, and you've seen some of the measures, you have some comments, we're here for that too. But it's just not an expectation for this evening, since we're keeping everything kind of high level until we can really unpack Imagine 2050 and then dig into the measurement program. But because, of course, we're here at the Equity Advisory Committee, we'll spend a few slides towards the end really describing how equity has been considered in this program so far and where more work is emerging as Imagine 2050 is implemented across the council and how that relates to our program. So in summary, tonight is really an introduction, a way to provide like the background or the foundation that our colleagues will build on. And then we can all come back together and really dig into the program and the data and start talking about that. So I hope that sounds like a plan. I'm going to get us going with this first piece on the introduction. And I apologize in advance to any of my colleagues watching who are like, this is not what I typically, like my typical content, but I'll try to do it justice. So Imagine 2050 is the current regional development guide. It is a 1,200 plus page document. And that might not even include all of the appendices and amendments. Because of its size and scope, the council created a website of the plan so that you can jump around to different areas of interest, search it, without having to kind of page through a really long, substantial document. So that is the link that is shared in the image that you're seeing on the slide. But if cover-to-cover reading is your thing, you can find the entire guide in each of the 2050 policy plans on this website under the section that says downloads. So if that's your preferred way, you have that there as well. A little bit about why do we write a regional development guide? Well, because the council is required to by Minnesota state statute. Every 10 years following the decennial census, Met Council writes one of these development guides. We've put the statutory language here and highlighted or created some emphasis on certain parts. And the reason we wanted to share the exact language is because it does surprise some folks about sort of the extent to which the scope of our plan, what it can include, that it can be about the physical, social, and economic needs of the region, not just where we're putting pipes in the ground or, planning new trails or running buses. And so that is the language that guides our work when it comes to the Regional Development Guide. Taking a closer look at Imagine 2050 specifically, the council's approach to Imagine 2050 was different this cycle, than it had been in previous decades. The regional vision, goals, and policy chapters were kind of co-developed at the same time to create an integrated regional policy direction. Which is different than, let's say, our previous development guide, in which the guide came and then the system plans and policy plans came after. So as this graphic kind of shows, it's used to depict the structure of the regional development guide. You have at the foundation kind of our existing conditions, our understanding of where we're at right now as a region, and what are some of the trends or changes that we're moving towards. Then we have the values and vision and the goals, which I'll provide the exact language in just a few slides. And that's really the foundation. Then we see the policy areas: land use, housing, parks, water, transportation. Those are all chapters that provide policies and actions that build on that foundation and get really specific into their, specific areas. So following the adoption of the guide, the local planning assistance team within community development, they coordinate and publish a handbook that really kind of guides local governments in creating local comprehensive plans that will comply and be consistent with the regional development guide. So the guide is this high-level directional document, and then we bring it into the weeds and into the nitty-gritty about what local governments need to do to satisfy the requirements that we put forward in Imagine 2050. And we just put a couple of quick stats here. There's 4 values, 5 goals, 100 regional policies, and over 650 actions across topics. So it is, again, quite expansive in scope. This slide provides the actual vision statement of Imagine 2050, which I believe was co-created with our council members as well as council staff. A prosperous, equitable, and resilient region with an abundant opportunities for all to live, work, play, and thrive. And on this slide, we have the 5 regional goals. And their short descriptions, which I won't read them all, but you have them here, and I'll be speaking for a moment. These were also, I believe, developed with our council members. And I just want to note here that as I move into like these very quick snapshots of what the policy plans look like, you'll see repeatedly these words and phrases because there is a strong interrelationship between these 5 directional goals and the policy direction within the chapters. So you'll see the word natural systems in across these plans. You'll see the word climate across these plans. So I just want to kind of highlight that it's redundant in like the right way. So just really demonstrating those connections. I am going to move through these next couple of slides really quickly. As I said earlier, Sarah and I are not the policy experts in this work. We are sort of the experts in our program as it relates to this work. So we're not going to be able to really get into the details of any particular area. But we're just summarizing here to give you a sense of the topics that are under each plan, especially if it's been a bit since you've seen any of this information. So I'm going to start with our land use policy. This is a section of the plan written by our local planning assistance department within community development. They work with planners across the organization to inform land use policy and develop the technical assistance for local governments, like the handbook I just mentioned. In like the simplest of terms, land use planning is about setting the region up for future success. Where will we grow based on our long-range forecasts? How should we prioritize the regional investments in infrastructure based on that growth? So that's the type of content and policy that is described here. It's organized into these 8 objectives. And again, as you can see right off the bat here, strong connections to those regional goals I showed in the previous slide. The 2050 Housing Policy Plan is developed by our Housing and Livable Communities Department, again within CD, Community Development. And they worked with our Regional Housing Authority, Metro HRA, as well as our Livable Communities Act grant staff, who administer the funds for that program to develop the policy direction in this chapter. There's a slightly different format here. There were 3 themes that emerged from an intensive community engagement period while they were writing the plan. And so their objectives are kind of laid out under those 3 themes. But again, you can see, strong connections to the regional goals. Regional Parks and Trails, another community development endeavor written by our Regional Parks and Trails department, also in partnership with our grants and finance team, because that system infrastructure and investments as part of this policy plan. There are 7 policies here. And again, pretty straightforward connections back to those regional goals. So we're leaving community development, moving into other divisions of the council. The Environmental Services Division authored this 2050 Water Policy Plan, which integrates planning and management for wastewater, water supply, stormwater, natural surface waters, and groundwater in the region. I believe this is the first time that they integrated all of those plans that had previously been separate planning documents under one chapter. And then Imagine 2050, was the big umbrella over all of it. And because of that integrated approach, you can see that, it's a pretty long chapter that includes both operations and investments and through 12 objectives that they've identified here. And then last but certainly not least is our 2050 Transportation Policy Plan, which includes planning and investments across 33 policies that they've organized along the lines of the regional goals, and over 180 actions. And they really go into detail about where Met Council leads, where other partner agencies lead. So they're very detailed in describing that. And so you can see some of the partners that they have listed here, and some of the types of actions that they describe, how they're looking at technical capacity, localized planning, and those types of things. This does not include like metro transit service plans, but there is some high level transit planning. Obviously, transit's part of our regional transportation system, so there are references there. Okay, so that's like much bigger than a nutshell. That's the regional development guide, and I kind of as brief as I can be about it, while still being moderately useful in setting up Sarah to talk more about the outcomes measurement program. So I'm going to go ahead and let her take it from here. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Kristen. So now that we've introduced sort of what Imagine 2050 is, we'll go over how we plan to track and measure change as it relates to this policy direction. And that is through the outcomes measurement program. And this link here should work, and it will take you to a website that kind of describes more information about the program, much of which I will go over here. So our approach to measurement for this regional development guide is different than what we've done in the past. With past regional development guides, namely Thrive MSP 2040, which was the last one, we had a short list of measures with varying degrees of relevancy, and it was really difficult to use that information to sort of describe changes in the region that aligned with that policy direction. So with some lessons learned from past efforts, we refined the approach for Imagine 2050, and I just want to highlight two main changes here. The first is that this program is designed to be responsive to whatever unfolds during the next decade, while also sort of keeping the regional goals and policy outcomes as the North Star, sort of our guiding principles. And the second is that this program captures action and change at various levels. It includes those of Met Council and our regional and our local partners. So it's really bringing to light some of the groundwork that might otherwise go unnoticed. But our goal for the outcomes measurement program is to have a more holistic description of what takes place in the region over the next decade as it relates to Imagine 2050, and to create a shared foundation for dialogue about those changes. So this slide describes the program's commitments, and they're really about establishing and documenting the opportunity to build dialogues. This program isn't just an exercise in collecting data. It's really about how we at the council and in the region use it. We also want to be very clear that there can be tension as our region changes and develops. And we will see some of those tension points reflected in this program. But this program isn't meant to resolve those trade-offs and balances. It is meant to facilitate respectful dialogues. So the program includes commitments on a couple different levels. Within the Met Council, we are committing to the cross-divisional support that this program requires, but we're also committing to our partners and residents that the region that we will be more transparent and that we will follow through with that core value of accountability in Imagine 2050. So this slide outlines the program's three guiding principles. The first is the need to be iterative as data sources, methods, or processes change. We're really trying to bake in that idea of continuous improvement so that this program can continue to put the best data and information forward. Another central idea of this program is making sure that it's adaptable and responsive to the feedback or engagement that we have moving forward. We know obviously a lot can happen in 10 years. New issues and priorities can arise. And this program is designed to meet the needs of regional audiences, even as they may change. And finally, the program really strives to provide meaningful information for us and for our stakeholders. And it's really supposed to tell us something about what's happening in the region. And I just want to note here that in service of the program's commitment to iteration and continuous improvement, it's sort of split into two parts. So the first is the program narrative. That's really the description of the program, what it is, why it's needed, how it works. This includes the commitments, the guiding principles, and the structure, and these will not change throughout the decade. But the second part is the list of initial measurement or measures that we plan to track and monitor. And we made this distinction because we do expect changes in the measures themselves. So what we monitor will change over time in service of the guiding principles here on this slide. So here is an overview of the language that's used in this program and how we are sort of describing different levels of action. So the first type in the measurement program is a regional indicator. So these are sort of big population level trends that provide context about the region, but they're also the big needles that sort of require collective action to move. In the middle, we have our regional measures, and those capture how local partners advance the 2050 regional goals and policies. And finally, we have our Met Council measures, and these speak more directly to how we as an organization are advancing 2050 goals and policies. So they describe the impacts of our grants, our programs, and our investments, or how we're leading by example. But taken together, these three layers of information make up our measurement slates, which provide a more holistic understanding of change happening at the region at different levels and scales. So we're not going to dig into the specific measures during this presentation, but we will touch a bit on how the measures were developed. There are about 160 measures included in our initial slate, and that does not include the transportation measures, which were previously adopted with Imagine 2050 and will be folded into the program. And given that number, you might think that we threw every idea into the slate, but we did in fact have some criteria for what was and was not included, and many ideas were scratched because they did not meet the criteria. But first and foremost, measures must represent policy direction or commitments described in Imagine 2050. So Imagine 2050 does cover a lot of the planning and policy work that we do here at the Met Council, but it does not include everything that we do. Second, we really want these data to describe outcomes, not outputs. And we want them to use high quality, reliable information to do so. So, you know, we do have some room for improvement in some of the measures in reflecting outcomes, but this work was new to many areas of the council. So we'll start from where we are and we'll use the program design for continuous improvement to move away from outputs and closer to outcomes. And lastly, we really want these data to show change, and that requires 2 or 3 comparable data points at minimum for the decade. And ideally, these data also lend themselves to, you know, drill downs or disaggregations. We don't expect that the same trends across the region or across population groups. We know that people experience the same thing in very different ways. So we look for sources that will allow us to parse data in meaningful ways. And we'll talk more about what that looks like in just a bit. Okay, so now we will zoom in a little bit on equity. And before we do so, I do just want to reiterate Kristen's point that we are not the authors of this chapter or this content, so we will do our best, but we're not the experts and we may not be able to answer all of your questions if any do come up, but we can certainly get your questions to the appropriate people and get back to you. But Imagine 2050 establishes an equity framework, and the framework did guide and will continue to guide the development and implementation of the policies and processes in Imagine 2050. There are 3 main grounding concepts of the equity framework, and that is contextualized, community-centered, and reparative. And together, these are intended to provide a better understanding of power, roles, and preconceptions about the system or the policy area. So as Kristen mentioned earlier, one of the 5 regional goals is that our region is equitable and inclusive. Equity is deeply integrated across Imagine 2050, and we've sort of mirrored that structure in the outcomes measurement program. So in addition to having some equity-specific measures, we've also integrated equity across other policy areas and topics. And one of the key ways that we do this is by evaluating and prioritizing disaggregation across all measures. So one of the main areas we look at is demographically. So evaluating how different populations might experience something in different ways. So for example, we might look at trends for different race or ethnicity groups, different income levels, disability status, things like that. And just a few of the things that we plan to look at using these disaggregations are housing cost burden, visits to regional parks and trails, and population without health insurance. There are many more. Those are just a handful of, or a few examples. But we also look at where we can break things down spatially. So looking at trends or data points in specific neighborhoods or geographic areas, like environmental justice areas, for example. Again, this isn't a comprehensive list, but some of the things that we plan to look at with spatial disaggregation is housing in high flood risk areas, tree canopy coverage in areas with extreme heat, and impervious surface growth. And I think with that, I will turn it back to Kristen.
Thanks, Sarah. Just have a few more slides here. Kind of continuing on this focus on the equity and inclusion chapter of Imagine 2050, in addition to that main framework 2 slides ago that had those 3 buckets, there were some topic-specific or issue-specific equity frameworks also adopted with Imagine 2050. And I believe some of them came through EAC for feedback, so maybe some of these look familiar. But the 3 that I'm referencing are the environmental justice framework, the anti-displacement framework, and there is a community-centered engagement framework. And so this slide just, is a refresher or like provides a little bit of context for what those include. It's the environmental justice and anti-displacement share that sort of 3 bucket approach, right? Contextualized, community-centered, and reparative. So that's the format that you see here. In the community-centered engagement framework, there were a number of principles listed here, that were the sort of the spine of that framework. So a little bit of a different format there. And I mention this because there is an implementation work group taking place within the council about how are we as a Met Council operationalizing and applying these frameworks. And I think once that implementation strategy is, kind of put forward, we will be developing some measures to monitor, Met Council measures to monitor coming out of that work. It's just in progress right now. So obviously we don't have exactly the measures lined up to share with you today, but just wanted to mention that that is an ongoing piece of work concerning equity and outcomes measurement. And one other section within Imagine 2050 that's housed under the equitable and inclusive chapter, though it is in fact a distinct area of work, are the commitments that were developed by the Council's American Indian Advisory Council. Distinct in that we have as a government agency, we have a government to government relationship with our tribal communities who have sovereignty, right? So it takes a different shape and it requires a different type of response and commitment and responsibilities. So there were a number of high-level enterprise commitments made. Developing the acknowledgement that was read at the start of the meeting was one of those things, and then more action-oriented things such as updating our tribal consultation policy, increasing American Indian staff at the council, and developing some specific training materials related to regional systems. So the tribal state relations training that the state offers is an incredible resource, but how do we bring that like even closer to our work that we do at Met Council? So that's what that commitment looks like. There were also commitments recommended by this council for the specific policy areas. So they were taken up by those policy authors and hardwired into those plans or like across those plans. But each plan does have at least one, if not several. And we're working with the staff, our tribal liaison, and other division staff who are focused on tribal relations to turn those commitments into like measurable outcomes. We're not quite there, but we will be working with them to kind of clarify and try to create something that we can include in our program, because it's important to do that. And it's been a great shift in our work at Met Council, this acknowledgement and increased commitment to working with our American Indian residents and tribal partners. Okay, we made it. As I mentioned earlier, those deeper dives into policy plans are anticipated, and then we can return in alignment with those presentations to kind of share the adopted measures that we're monitoring and receive your feedback, right? So really dig in. In terms of the measurement program, just a little work plan note, I suppose, about the rest of our year for 2026. We'll really be focused on data development and documentation and database systems. So I'm sure you can imagine with like 160 plus data points, and they're coming from various grant systems and the census and, external data sources that may be here today and not here tomorrow, right? So it's a very dynamic data effort here. And so that's going to take up a lot of the rest of our year. Our goal is to publish the outcomes measurement program website, like with the data that you can see, in 2027. And at which point we will start really engaging external stakeholders about their interpretations of the trends, what do these trends mean for progress for our region. So we're excited to get to that part. We're excited about all of it, but we're excited to get to that part where we can actually start putting information in front of people and really asking them, what is it getting right? What isn't it getting right? What are the important data points to you and your community? So we look forward to that. And again, I just want to thank the committee for having us here this evening to provide this introduction. And as I said, we look forward to digging in much more later this year with the context in place. So I think with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and turn it back over to our EAC chair or co-chairs. And we'll stick around and answer questions and receive comments as your agenda, as the time on the agenda allows. I know you have other items to get to, so thank you.
Fantastic. So thank you, Sarah Nelson and Kristen Rybeters. I know you said it and I still didn't. For that thorough presentation. We'll now open the floor for questions or discussion from the committee. To ensure online participants that I know who's interested, please use the raise hand feature and we'll call on you individually. The floor is now open.
I need to use the online hand.
The chair recognizes Tony Carter. Council member Tony Carter, my apologies.
Okay, did I raise it?
You did. Please go ahead.
So as you will know, the council members have been involved for a period of years, dedicatedly over the past couple of years, meeting in work groups and putting in the foundation of the plan, receiving reports and information from staff as the entire plan was built. And so I'm really, really glad to hear it in summary today. And thank you, because you put a lot into condensing into biteable sizes the extreme work that has been done. But I would also note that the work that represents the Regional Development Guide, and now, of course, the Outcomes and Measurement Program that goes with it, which is new, has been in process since the last 2040 guide, really. So it's a combination of the information gleaned, the learnings that have happened over the past 10 years that have now led to this guide. You'll notice that the underpinnings of the guide are really all focused on, I would say, community and equity. Those really are truly in every area of policy, the way the guide was built. And we are challenging ourselves at such a time as this to remain true to the guide and to its goals for our community and the underpinnings of community engagement and equity that it represents. So I'm really delighted to hear the summary today and to hear any feedback that will come from Equity Advisory community members as we work to stay faithful to the plan that has been built to ensure the outcomes described in the guide for the next period of years. So thanks a lot for the work to bring this forward to us today. And I look forward to hearing what members have as input and feedback.
Thank you, Councilmember Carter. I did have a couple questions myself. I know that you mentioned in your introduction that you're working on some web design skills. I wonder how either yours or others' skills and expertise might be used to make the information digestible for community when you get to the point of reaching out for their input. I know that when we've looked at the guide before, that it's quite a large document, and I could imagine that having outcome measures in so many different areas will also result in a lot of information for people to digest. And folks have a tendency to just kind of disengage or to, not follow through when they're, asked to give feedback on such large things. So I just wonder how you all are preparing to make the information digestible and something that community can engage with in real ways.
Yes, thank you for that question. Well, we have a little bit of time to think about it, which is good because the back end development is pretty extensive. But I think as we are, looking at other websites that I think have done a pretty decent job of that accessibility, like Minnesota Compass, for example, right? Really kind of, provides a trend, provides like a high level sort of interpretation or takeaway of that trend. But I think the important thing for us is to make sure that, our view and strategy with this program is to understand that we can't just send out a link to a website that does have a lot of data on it and say, like, let us know what you think. Good luck. We probably can't even do that for council staff, to be honest. Like, it's just too much. So, we are working on a facilitated kind of engagement strategy in part with the qualitative researchers that are part of our department who have developed some ways of putting like smaller amounts or pulling together like what is important to you right now? What are the issues that are really hitting at the heart of your community right now? And to build in the functionality into our site to allow us to filter down to those specific things and to then really just take maybe 5 or 6 data points and really focus on building kind of a community understanding or interpretation session just based off of a smaller collection of data that they set the agenda around. And then saving that narrative, right, that exercise and, publishing it and right, there on the site as well, so that we can kind of track and be transparent about the variety of regional dialogues that are taking place, right? There's not one regional conversation, there are many regional conversations, but how do you kind of centralize that so that you can see what a particular community organization, for example, selected and discussed during that engagement session. So we are going to be stretching the limits of like what government IT is used to and good at, and trying to really develop something that is searchable, filterable, dynamic, using plain language all over the place, making sure that we don't just get like navel gazy about like the data itself and really focus on the interpretation and what is this data saying that resonates with you, but also where is it missing something, and being transparent about that too, and trying to lift up where whether it's certain neighborhoods or population groups feel like this does not describe our experience, and giving them that opportunity to say that, and that we share that back out with as part of this like narrative building. So I realize that kind of describing a website is dangerous business. It's a little abstract, but I think that putting forward the data and information is one part of that site, but being able to kind of grab things and stick them next to each other and comment on them, and then when we share that and we record that back, that's the way we like build a shared conversation. So that's the vision that we have. Exactly how to achieve it, we'll get there. We're just not quite there just yet, but that's about what I can offer at this time. Thank you for the question, though. It's great, and it's something we think about and kind of dream about a lot.
It's good to know that is part of the thought process, even if you don't have the exactly how yet.
Yeah.
Committee members, feel free to use your raise hand function if you have questions or. So I guess I'll keep going. One of the concerns that many members of our committee have raised in the past is just what the teeth will be behind the data. We're really committed to staying true to the 2050 plan as we've written it, and not to letting, current events and that sort of thing push us off track. But if the data does start to show that we're getting on track, have we started to think about what mechanisms we'll use to pull us back in the direction that we committed to?
Yeah, I think that is a great question, and I would be interested in what our policy authors have to say about that. I think by the time we really get this version of this program up and running and shared and are doing these narrative building conversations, we'll be at the brink of like starting, I can't even believe it, but we'll be at the brink of starting to plan for our 2060 plan. And I think that the timing of that will be great in the sense that what the trends that we're seeing, the interpretation of those trends will be like on the tip of our tongues as we start to do an engagement process and a policy development process for like the next plan. So for us, it's a bit of a longer term, or like a longer term horizon as to how specific policy, folks that are implementing regional policy and, what they might see in the trends and what their ability to pivot kind of based on the information that's in front of them looks like. I think that's going to differ across different areas, just based on the nature of kind of the long range, nature of our planning work here at Met Council, and also some of our funding cycles too, right? If you have a 2 or 3 year program that's administering, investment dollars towards investments or so forth. And then you get information that says, oh, maybe we need to shift our priorities or to do this a little differently. You're not going to see that unfold or like that shift happen until that next round of funding, for example. So it will be interesting to sort of see how it is used for that purpose, like internally to pivot to look at our priorities more deeply. But I don't want to speak for the folks that are doing like the actual on the ground policy work, as well as our local partners too. Government isn't particularly nimble, but I do think that certainly the pandemic and what we've been encountering in the federal immigration surge that has happened here is kind of unfortunately these deep crises that will have like long lasting and deep wounds to our region, and yet is really teaching government to be a little bit to build in its flexibility to be able to find its pivot points. So I don't know, maybe that is helping us to open that door and be more responsive when we do see trends or information that makes us question whether we're on track or not. But I think save that question and please ask it to the folks that are coming with the additional presentation.
Fantastic. Commissioner Carter, the floor is yours.
I appreciate that question.
You remuted.
I'm sorry. I was going to say, I just really appreciate the question. And I feel as though the guide does make some bold commitments, in all of the policy areas based on the values that we have stated and the goals that we've stated. So as we look at housing and how, what kind of housing we can influence with our policy and with our dollars, actually program dollars that we have, we're trying to build those programs to influence the regional goals as they are expressed. We are trying to be accountable and show the work. Hopefully we will be guided by the statements we've made, but our best accountability is to you. It is to the people to whom we've made these commitments. And I don't doubt that we're going to have those questions, from you on an ongoing basis as we look to the work in transportation, as we look to the work that we bring forward to you. You're going to continue to ask the hard questions about whether or not the values expressed are being lived out in the programs that are coming forward. And so that, I think, is going to be the greater measure of how we're doing, is how, in fact, this work is received in the community. And also, we have to influence our partners and our government partners to do this work with us. It isn't just the Met Council. It's a statement for the entire region and how the region will grow and accommodate the use of all of our resources together to benefit people. So, I don't have easy answers to it. Clearly, the outcomes measurement program will help us. The indicators that we're looking at regionally or the measurements for the Met Council. Are we seeing what we need to see in terms of outcomes for the community? And are our programs helping in the ways that we have indicated they should at the Met Council? So those are going to be continually questions that we'll hear and do our very best to respond to. And at a time like this, to be certain that we're meeting the needs of our region, even though pressures come from all over, and we know in particular from our federal government today to lean differently. We have determined the direction we're headed in, and we have to keep ourselves honest together.
Thank you for that. Our Q&A time is just about up. Are there any other committee members who had any questions? All right, seeing no further questions, thank you again, Kristen and Sarah, for your presentation today. We will move into our next agenda item, which is our Equity Advisory Committee 2025 recap presentation and 2026 work plan, presented by Tori Hampton from the Office of Equal Opportunity and Equity. This presentation will provide a summary of the committee's work, key milestones, and reflections from 2025 to support shared understanding and future planning. Tori, you have the floor.
Thank you, Carmianne. I just want to say we also established quorum. So at the end of the presentation, we can go ahead and review those minutes and approve them if we would like to. All right, so let me cue up my screen. I'll introduce myself. I'm Tori Hampton, and I currently work closely with the EAC in the Office of Equity and Equal Opportunity in the Equity Implementation Unit here at the Met Council. And today my presentation is on the Equity Advisory Committee, our end of year summary 2025, every year we are presenting a summary of our year between our EAC members and going to the council as a whole, just to present what our committee worked on last year. And then after that, I'll fall into a presentation on our 2026 work plan and a discussion. So I don't want to just talk to you guys today. I want to have that discussion about our work plan. I did send it out maybe in December before the year began to get some comments on it. I did get some comments back on the work plan, but we'll go over those things when we get to them. So I'll go ahead and start the presentation for the end of the year summary first. And I am sharing now. So first we want to go over just a quick agenda items for our end of the year presentation. So we're going to look at our current membership and vacancies. We're currently in recruitment right now. We wrapped up our recruitment interviews, and we have some follow-up meetings, and we will be giving more information on that today as well. And then we have our opening statement of appreciation for our EAC. Our purpose of this end of the year summary presentation, our 2025 impactful presentations that we work closely or had some great impacts on, our EAC achievements and wins for 2025, and then also highlighting our EAC members for our recognitions, because we do really appreciate you guys and giving all your service for equity across the region. So we have our EAC members listed here. We interviewed around 18 or between 15 candidates. We got about 19 applications, and we had a really good turnout for interviews. We had really great candidates for this EAC position, and I'm excited to move forward with the 8 new members that will be joining us and completing our committee. We have well over enough applications to be able to review. And how it works in the review process is we have a scale that we measure our interviews on based on the questions of how they answer, the accuracy of the questions, and also, you know, their personality, how they feel about equity, and all of the things that basically just displays their livability and their connection to Metropolitan Council. So they can, so we can make sure when they do come to the council, they have an understanding of who we are and what the task is for them to join the committee. So we have 8 seats, and we will be filling those shortly. So we're excited about that and introducing new members. So I'll go ahead into the opening statement. So this was actually a presentation that was supposed to be in January, but we ran out of time. So this is still a Happy New Year and Happy Black History Month that we are in right now. And we in OEO, we really want to express our gratitude for our EAC members. As said earlier, it's so nice to see you supporting our resilient region, protecting our public waterways and parklands to sustain our environment, and connecting people to places and fostering an inclusive economic growth, and making sure that your communities know and have this information at the forefront, and bring in your advisory experience here. So what is the purpose of this end of the year summary presentation? So of course, like I said before, we want to review and reflect on our progress and achievements. I think that's really important in the space, especially when it comes to understanding and co-powering together as a community and committee members, and working with us here at the council, and ensuring that your voices are heard, right? And that the advice that you give really penetrates the system as we wanted to do it, as you guys are EAC members. And then we also want to identify and celebrate your success and your wins. A lot comes from this committee, and we give great advice, and we have great purpose here at the council. So I think it's very important, not just in our space, but when we do take it to the council as a whole, that they understand the successes of what we do here in EAC. And then, of course, highlighting the important projects and emphasizing on the significance of membership, diversity, and stakeholder support. So committee overview. So actually this last year, 2025, was our 10th year of advancing regional equity and priorities. as an EAC. So I think that's really something to highlight. We've been doing this for 10 years now, and I don't think people really look at it because time moves so fast. So I do want to just thank not just the members that's been staying on for the longest time, but also our new members that continue to show up every day. Then the EAC also serves as an advisory body, and we want to talk more about like what the advisory body holds in our 2026 work plan to see how we can further the co-powering between the EAC and the council. And also, we are comprised of council members and community members, right? So that means that we work together in making decisions and we co-power each other within those different areas. So our council members are really there to support us with the decisions, or maybe something that we want to see brought forward, such as the information brought forward today was actually requested from Councilmember Pacheco. And then provides recommendations on equity and policy areas, including transportation, housing, and environment, workforce, and procurement. So just a little bit about our committee overview. So some of the impactful presentations from last year, we had about 9 critical projects and initiatives related to equity. I would say that's a kind of a dip from what we usually have. We kind of switched it up a little bit with presentations. We didn't want to overdo too much and run out of time. So when we scheduled 2 or 3 presentations at a time, we noticed that that wasn't a good flow for the meeting and allowing people to respond. And then sometimes people will have to present faster than normal. So we decided to focus on 1 presentation at each meeting to assure that we have enough time to answer questions and anything else that, we might want to advise on here in this space. So some of the important presentations, as I went through them that I looked through, I felt that the workforce and development equity update was a really good presentation. The project bank accounts. So that was a presentation that was really nice. It focused on project bank accounts starting with transit programs for small businesses, that this account will hold money that they can pull from instead of them not having the money on hand or having to wait for them to get paid out for the government. So that would be like one of the first projects or programs like that in the whole country. So it definitely was a great project that we discussed. We also discussed disparity study, human resource and recruitment, and climate and environmental justice. Some successes and some wins that we have. We did do some recruiting last year, and those members are still here. We did have some people that fell off of the committee as well based off attendance. We had consistent meeting participation. I think that's these small wins are so important because when people join the meeting, we're able to get things done and we're able to move forward. So by going virtual, it really helped us have consistent meeting participation, which is something that shouldn't go unnoticed because we were really struggling with that in this space. We also have really impactful member contributions this year. So we really appreciate, and bylaws finalization as well. So finally got through a whole year of bylaws finalization, which is a very, very, very good win for us. So what are we looking ahead for in 2026? So this is going into our work plan. So we want to strengthen our partnership with council departments, increase representation in priority areas and projects. So what that means is we want more representation across the council. We just don't want to see an overflow of transit projects. We want to get into environmental services, community development, regional administration, metro transportation services, all of our departments, and go really deep into their focus areas where equity is impacted the most, such as the presentation that was presented here today. We also want to expand community outreach and awareness. So how can we get the EAC viewed more so that people can understand what we are reviewing here and can participate in more of public meeting and open discussion space? And then explore opportunities for subcommittees. This is a really big thing because once we really go deep into these subcommittees, we'll really be able to have that co-powering experience between council members and committee members and our staff here at in OEO. So we want to hear from you. So what does it look like building a better EAC? We'll discuss this next. But just to reflect on some of these things before we get there, as we grow into the new year, we want to strengthen our relationship with the council leaders and staff. That's a really big thing for us internally as a goal for me and our team, with me, Lila, and Tony. Strengthening our relationships with our constituents here really would drive the EAC forward, right? So we really want to dig deeper into the organization and really just establish those relationships. And then we also want to hear from you. So some of those questions and some things that can get you thinking, how can EAC contribute to your work this year? What equity challenges can EAC help address in 2026? How can we communicate more effectively across departments and teams? And what would you like to see from the EAC moving forward? So those are some of the questions that we're asking ourselves internally so that we can better serve you as the committee members. And then I'll go ahead and jump into the recognitions. So we want to acknowledge you guys. Literally, I think it's important to write something about every single person on the committee, just because we are all equals and we all bring great values to this committee. So we want to acknowledge participation on all of our members here on the screen, as you see, for exceptional commitment, for ongoing contributions, for notable dedications, great attendance, for just being here, enjoying the EAC on such a short notice and jumping in and being able to help outside of those other challenging things. Some of our EAC members did help us with our interviews, which was very nice. We love when we have committee members there that's able to really give a deeper dive for our people that we're recruiting, to have better conversations during the recruitment process. So we really appreciated that. And then we want to give a special recognition to Carmen Foster, our co-chair. She has been holding it down for us throughout the year, and she came in with great leadership as a co-chair, stepping into a role and just really being a really impactful player on the team. So I really want to give thanks to Carmen and her leadership throughout this co-chair experience. She really hopped in and really got the job done. So thank you so much. And then I want to lead us into the next presentation work plan, and we'll have the discussion there. And we'll follow up with this last quote by Marianne Williamson. And it says, in every community, there's work to be done. In every nation, there are wounds to heal. In every heart, there is the power to do it. And just want to say that because, we are a community here at the EAC. We're not just here as, council members or committee members or community members. We want this to be a community. And we know that externally, there's a lot going on within our community. So we do want to voice that. We are a community here for you. And we know that there's a lot of things that needs to be healed in this space. And we do offer that space for our members to reach out to us. So I'll go ahead and switch to our work plan. And I included this in the packet as well. I'll go over the work plan really quickly, and then we'll jump into discussion so that we can have that 30 minutes to really dig deep into discussion, because I don't think we usually have that type of time to dig into discussion here as EAC members. So I sent this an email. So the purpose of the 2026 EAC work plan, we want to make sure that we establish a clear structure. How presentations and initiatives come through the EAC. How do we ensure that early engagement happens, accountability, share power, across decision making across the council when it comes to equity and other things that involves equity and community decision making. So we really want to work hard on bringing impactful presentations, but not only just bringing presentations, but ensuring that your contribution is being used and that you are co-powered throughout the council. So what can we do better on our side to ensure that you get the experience that you deserve as community members, especially when this time is volunteered. So what does it look like to have all the resources you need to participate, but also being included in everyday decisions that happen here at the council? So what are some of our work plan goals, right? The things that we want to tangibly do this year. We want to create a predictable and transparent presentation intake process, right? So what that looks like is we have communication across the board when it comes to our different departments, and we have a specific time that we're communicating to them that this is the time that we want you to come to the EAC. So either that's in the first quarter, the second quarter, third, and fourth, based off of the information that they can provide for us and based on where they are in their process or their project, right? So are they in the beginning of their project, or are they at the end? If they're at the end of their project, you know, maybe they can come in and do a 30-minute review with you guys, but we can also offer, you know, what else can they give us, right? So we want to ensure that it's a predictable presentation in the intake process, so we understand the intake of the presentation that's being brought to the EAC. And then we want to enable early stage equity influence on council initiatives. So we just want to be more in the loop when it comes to what is going on. And we want to work more with our council members in that space and utilizing them more with enabling that early stage of equity influence. Maybe it's through, you know, procedure. Maybe it's through policy. You know, maybe it's, you know, all of those other things involved. Maybe it's a mixture of both, of ensuring that equity in our committee is influenced in the beginning of the process. We want to also co-power you. I keep saying that because it is very important, and that co-power is not something that we take lightly. We definitely want to get better at that here in our office through clarity and preparation and support. So as you guys notice, I'm happy we got the presentation out to you guys, like, you know, at least 10 days in advance, right? So we're trying to work on these things and getting you guys the information so that you can digest it better and take it in and come with the questions and really review the information that's given to you. And then we also strengthen accountability and follow through on equity guidance, right? So what does it look like for communication for the EAC? We want to work on what does that look like? Is it a team site that we can possibly get going for internal and external? You know, maybe introducing some other things that some people said in the past, like they want a tablet, you know, to ensure that they can really access the meetings as they should. So we want to make sure that we take some accountability on our side and ensure that we give you the resources that you need to be successful in this committee. And then support council members and staff with clear expectations. I keep saying support the council members because they are really into it. They're our guide to everything that's going on in the council. They're almost every committee that we have here. So we want to lean in on what are the things that they're doing a little bit more in those spaces. So I'll go next to the annual presentation timeline. So 12 to 24 presentations. I just say in between there. We don't know how many it's going to be this year. Not last year, we had about 9 presentations. We don't want to go that low. We want to make sure that we do bring great information here, but we don't want to underserve when it comes to presentations as well. So like I said, 1 primary presentation a month, optional second presentation for emergent or time-sensitive issues. So we do want to have backup presentations as well, or at least have more people that's willing to come to the council. So we want people to not come to the council, but come to the EAC. You know, we want them to fill out a form, like, you know, we want to have like 10 presentations that we can present, or have you guys at least choose from to feel like which one is the most effective and which one can you contribute to the most. Intake opens about 4 to 6 weeks prior for scheduled EAC members. So we want to make sure that people, we have it lined up. So at least 4 to 6 weeks before the presentation happens. And this is good because we don't want to be scrambling for presentations at the last minute. Presenters receive guidance 2 to 3 weeks before presenting. So we have a EAC guidelines that we put together and we shared last year with our co-chairs of just some guidelines of, when you come to the EAC, what should you expect, So we definitely give that to our presenters. Equity feedback documented within 1 to 2 weeks after meeting. So this is what we need to work on the most. That feedback loop from you guys to our presenters, and how much time should we give them for follow-up. So that time for follow-up and shared information is between 30 and 90 days so that we can give them time to implement the advice on their projects that you guys give. And we want to make sure that we enhance communication as well. So some of the roles and responsibilities, I think it's really important to lay out our roles and responsibilities. So EAC co-chairs, what is the role of a co-chair? Provide leadership, agenda setting, and flow. Support preparedness and inclusive dialogue. Elevate key equity themes to council. So those are the key roles of the co-chairs. All right, the key roles of council members are EAC liaisons. Refer in initiatives such as advice for equity engagement. Share early project information. So if you have something and bring it forward, we can evaluate it. And elevate EAC insight and council decision making. All right, then we have our committee members. So our EAC committee members apply equity lens and informed by lived and professional experiences, participate in decisions in subcommittees, and serve as ambassadors for equity within their communities, as liaisons for the council specifically. And then our equity staff coordinate intake preparation and follow-up, provide equity policy alignment and facilitation. So it's so much more that goes into those pockets of what we do. This is just a summary. So we are working on like a more broader document where we break down at large and district members. And when we do have that, that's something that we'll go through the subcommittee. So 2026 presentation roadmap. So this roadmap just gives us an overview of what to look forward to. It's not giving us specific presentations, but it is giving us a flow of how presentations will come or what type of presentations will come during that month or quarter. So foundation and alignment, we're working on still recruiting. So we do have to do EAC orientation that we don't have to go live with EAC orientation, but that is something that we are doing. It was supposed to be last month, but it's moving all the way to March. So I just want to point that out, that this orientation is moving to March. We had a presentation on the rail, the blue line, last January. And then we had equity implementation for the regional development guide presentation that we had this today. So that's kind of followed into the equity and early planning projects here. So those are our big projects, right? We want to bring those forward in the beginning of the year. So that was our main goals, our foundation and alignment. So we're doing a big project overview. We're also doing recruitment, and we're doing orientation and onboarding new members onto the EAC within quarter run. And then for the next quarter, we want to focus on regional infrastructure and equity. So we do want to actually invite more regional development guide professionals within this space, and community development, transit equity and service access, and environmental service and climate equity. So this quarter is going to be really packed with presentations from different departments here at the council. So quarter one is to really level set us. Quarter two is to dig deeper into our regional and infrastructure equity projects. And then quarter three is to focus specifically on our equity OEO office. So that's our affirmative action updates. our workforce equity, our small business and procurement update, our human resource update. So these are regularly regular projects or programs that come to the EAC at the third quarter for a synopsis on just the entire year for those practices. And then our quarter 4 is our accountability and future planning. So we also go over some HR systems and talent and retention. So here we really focus on HR. We might want to bring procurement into this channel as well, just to go over some things with them. And then we also talk about more emerging issues and how we close out the year for our new year, and do our annual outcomes in 2027 preview. So I know that was a lot of information in our work plan, and I want to just sit these questions here so I can get your mind going on the discussion that I want to have with you all today. So I'll go ahead and give the floor back to Carmi Ann, and then we can start with these questions.
All right. The floor is now open. Please use your raise hand feature to let us know that you would like to participate in the discussion. Please limit follow-ups so that we can hear from all the members within our discussion window.
All right, I'll read the first question. So what does co-powering EAC members truly look like in practice? So what does that really look like for our members in practice? Where do we currently feel empowered? Where do we feel, adversary but not influential? And this can be an open floor. Go ahead, Councilmember Tony Carter.
Okay, I'm not so sure that I can be as responsive to the discussion questions as maybe I would want to be, but you have presented a lot tonight. We looked over all of the things that we did last year and the kind of presentations, the 8 or 9 that came forward to us, and they were in impactful areas. I recall it was slide 4, where in the last presentation deck, you had the list of presentations that had come before us, and they were really good and important and impactful areas of work that are being done at the council. We saw some of that startup work, and I'm really interested in knowing whether others are feeling as though it's not just the presentation that we want to have before us, but it's the follow-up and an understanding of what kind of results maybe are coming. For example, from the project bank accounts. There are goals for those project bank accounts to help us to achieve greater minority business, small business participation. And I would like to know if EAC members are feeling as though we need to really be talking about those goals and understanding over time what our experience has been, and perhaps helping to work on sticky points. As presentations come before us, I love the fact that we get to hear what's done, what is planned, and what we hope will result. But there's some relationship that I'm feeling maybe missing for us right now that we would like to cultivate. So maybe that's the first question. I'm getting there. What does co-powering look like? If in fact what we're talking about in co-powering is having our EAC members help to co-power the council, and having the council more in relationship, the council meaning the broad council, those policymakers as well as staff leaders in relationship with the EAC, maybe that's what I'm talking about. It's not just about the presentation. It's about the work. It's about the results. What are the problems that we are facing? How, in fact, are we designing work to resolve those issues, and what is happening in the process that we should maybe keep track of so that we can continue to give that feedback. It doesn't seem like a one and done kind of thing. So that's what's on my heart as I talk about the work that we have seen. I feel as though there's more that should come forward in this year from that work. And then I know there's a whole lot of other presentations that we will see this year. But I'm just not feeling that the presentation is really the subject of our work. It is the ongoing process of the results that we're looking for that impact equity in our region. And I'd like the EAC to be more engaged with that. But there's something about relationship and not just presentation that I'm trying to express. So that, and then if we have 24 presentations coming, I'm not sure what thought time is there. You know, I'm not sure that we are really able to say, and so this is how we'll consider the matters that are being brought before us. And this is the kind of a rubric of our equity considerations that we'll be looking at. And I'm wondering if we want to exercise ourselves in that way. Do we want to understand what we're looking for together, you know, and to be able to scrutinize the work that's coming before us, to give that kind of strong feedback? So does that mean that we intake only presentation, or is there something about our training and our own engagement? That's the second thing that I would put forth. Because if we're going to be strong, if we are going to be a co-power, then we need to recognize that strength and understand the body's intent, the body meaning the EAC. What is our intent as we look at these presentations coming before us? And the third thing, so that's, you know, a couple of things so far. And I think the third thing is 24 presentations is a lot. Do we need to focus? Do we need to determine a focus for the coming year or two, you know? Because taking in 24 presentations is really cool, but I'm not so sure what we give back, you know, what our process of consideration and feedback and follow up and understanding of results will be. So that's just where my thinking is right now. I'm not giving answers. I'm asking questions and wanting to know how others are feeling about that. And if there's anything that we do, I sure appreciate all the work that you all have put into structuring this work. It looks good. But I just want to think about what the EAC wants to be and how we intend our results to look at the end of a year, at the end of any year or period of years. So that's where my feedback.
Yeah, and I agree wholeheartedly with everything that you've said, and I think that's the route that we want to be on when it comes to the EAC. And not to say we're going to get to 24 projects, right? But we do want to have a bank of projects for you guys to start deciding from. What do you want to see, right? So what do you want the goal and intention to be? Do you want it to really be focused on the regional development guide, right? Do you want it to be focused on the Blue Line project? What are you guys interested in, you know, long term? Because we know that bringing a lot of presentations to you in the past haven't done the committee any justice when it comes to holding us internally accountable for coming and giving back results of what the advice has been taken from the EAC. So we do want to figure out, when we do build those relationships with the individuals internally and we put in place procedures or policy for the EAC. That's really Lila's. She's working on that part and putting together, where should the EAC be planted into the Met Council, so that we can ensure that presentations do come to you in the beginning of the development stage, and to see how equity can be implemented earlier on in the stage instead of after everything's been developed, right? And coming to you guys after initiative has been placed together. So we do want to work on getting better at that. So I do champion everything that you said. And
I'm wondering what others on the meeting tonight are thinking. I love the fact that you're proactively setting this agenda and bringing this forward and having a menu of areas that the EAC can look toward. I'm just wondering if I'm the only one that's thinking this, or if others are feeling there's think time, there's maybe some tools that we need in order to, in a rubric fashion, entertain these topics as they come before us. I'm wondering whether this is bugging me because I'm me, or if there's something about this that others would grab onto. So I just put the question out there. Let me say that.
You can go ahead, Markia.
Oh, I'm just wondering if anyone actually on the EAC actually attends the meetings, like the weekly Met Council meetings, just to have a flavor of what's going on prior to it getting to us after projects are, almost complete. Is there anyone that regularly attends the meetings?
I have seen people there from time to time. I'm not thinking that that's a requirement either, but maybe there's something about being involved in other areas of the work. Attending Met Council meetings could be one thing, but that's truly not where the work all gets done. It comes together in a vote there, typically, or there might be a presentation. But there's so many other Met Council committees that some of you may be on, and I don't know if that could be a part of it. Do we have representation in other areas of the work that come back to the EAC? That, I think, could be a question for us to think through.
And that's where we do want to have that conversation with our council members, because they attend the council as a whole meeting every other Wednesday. They also have other subcommittees that they attend, or committee meetings, or areas that they're involved in. So we do want to figure out how we can get more of that conversation going, and kind of break down some of those silos within. I would say that I definitely can, go a little bit more in detail and listen to some more meetings and hold myself more accountable for going to maybe some more council as a whole meetings. And that is something that me and Lila and Tony have discussed, of us actually attending these meetings and being more involved in those other spaces. But I do also want to encourage our committee members to go on our websites and look at the meetings, just as this is live on YouTube. Those meetings are live as well. And also just bringing, we need to maybe have a space on the agenda where we do discuss, maybe for 5 minutes, what's going on in your community. Have your community discuss any of these projects, or if this is something, that is even interest in your community. So, just maybe we can talk about actually how do we restructure the agenda to ensure that, yes, it has bylaws intentions, right? We're following the bylaws, but how can we better use our time for our meetings to assure that, we really get that, have those more discussions on what's going on in other parts of the council, So I do want to offer to, think about how we can restructure just this 2 hours that we get and make sure, that we're using it in a feasible way to get everything that we want, right? So if we want to discuss other things that's happening around the council and have an update on that, we need to put that on the agenda so that can become a norm, right? And I think that's actually a really good suggestion, Marquita, to maybe we did have some things where we used to call out our co-chairs. I mean, not our co-chairs, but our council members at the end of the meeting. But we wanted to take that off because for some reason, I forget the reason. I don't want to reference it. But we took it off the agenda. But we can definitely put that back on the agenda and discuss maybe the ways of how we can form that conversation better than just calling on council members, right? To give us an in-depth of what their discussion is in those other spaces, but how we can better just have the conversation in the agenda. What about our other members that's been here for maybe a minute, a year, or 6, 7 months? How do we feel about any of these questions? Can you guys think of any feedback loops that you've used in other spaces? Maybe at work that's really been effective for you, or maybe in other community engagement spaces. Like, how is feedback? How can we get better feedback from you or loop you into the feedback? How would that look for you all from being external to the council, not for those that's internal? Because it's a little bit easier to make that feedback loop. Go ahead.
Yeah. Hi, this is Samira. I would definitely think the pre-brief sessions or summary memos would be great. I think because of the fact that we kind of meet once a month, it's easy for that time to go by and to kind of get out of the loop, if that makes sense. So even if it's something brief, I think it would be helpful for sure.
So just can you talk a little bit about that feedback memo, that summary memo? Like, need just a little bit more, when you're looking at it, you want to know, maybe a feedback update of the last presentation or what's coming before us. Like, what would that summary look like? Other projects in the council?
Yeah, I think it could be something like an email. I don't think it would have to be something super long, but just kind of what you stated. So an update as to kind of where things have gone after the previous meeting and what's coming up and kind of the context outside of the agenda packet. I think would be really great.
I'm loving this. So anybody else want to have a comment on any of these questions? So how can EAC co-chairs and EEL staff better prepare members for these complex presentations? How can we better support you in a space? Like,
Rory, can I jump in?
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
One of the things that we've been noodling on, and I'd love to hear other folks' thought as you think about the 4 questions there are, as we have presenters come in, if we have them frame their presentation so that there's takeaways that are tangible for you as members of councils and communities and who are active in places and spaces that we may not be, would it be helpful for them to give you messages that you can go out and share, not just the PowerPoint, but deliver the information that you were to learn that day? Because in 2 hours, you have a presentation or two. Sometimes it's hard to understand which parts of it matter the most. Would that be something that's helpful to this group?
I think that would be pretty helpful.
Take note of that. And then I just want to just get a temperature check. I know it's the beginning of the year with our members. So I just wanted to get a temperature check when it comes to the time of the meeting and, what's going on right now. Is this because I know that is a lot going on. So people have other spaces that they have to be in, or it's also, other things in life are going on. So the 6 to 8 p.m. still works great for everyone. How do you feel about the time of this meeting? Works good for you?
It works for me.
Okay, perfect. I just want to make sure that, this time works for everybody, because I do know that it's a late night meeting. So
I don't know if you're
always
seeing my
ask that.
thumbs up.
We do. We do.
Okay.
We do see it, and we do want to come to you guys when we, I think another part of that summary memo can be some of the things that we do kind of change on the way for EAC, like some of those feedback mechanisms that we do choose. I did send out a survey last meeting. I got 1 response. So I also need the feedback from you all to make this experience, ensure that we're covering. Yes, we do go through some of your questions, but it also asks you on that survey, is there anything else, right, that you were thinking of that you didn't get to get across during that meeting? And, it's just a more follow-up process. And the reason that we do it through a form is so that we can keep track of all of that information that you all say. So it'd be really nice. And even if it's not a lot, you don't have to fill out it like a document, a big document. So I just want to ask if you guys can fill out those surveys when after every meeting. So just to assure that even if you wrote something down, we just want to make sure that we take that. And also the meeting notes. That's another big thing. If it's something in the meeting notes that's not summarized to what you said, or those, I try to make sure that they are summarized to what you say. But if there's anything outside that you want to take forward, like if there's a high point that you noticed in the meeting notes, like, yeah, we want to follow up on that specific point. I would like to see those things brought forward in the beginning when we talk about meeting notes as well. So like when Carmian calls for meeting, approving the meeting agenda, I really, maybe I'll use Councilmember Tony Carter here as an example. So when she called for the agenda, Councilmember Carter will say something. I really, not for the agenda, for the meeting, the meeting minutes, I really, from the meeting minutes, when I looked at them last week, I really noticed that Carmian said something about, maybe put in equity in disadvantaged neighborhoods with the Blue Line Project or something like that. Can we get a follow-up on that more? So in those notes, when we do go over those notes, what are the high points in those notes that you guys want us to focus on, right? Maybe you get a presentation where we get more than enough commentary back, right? What is the main focus points or that you guys want to focus on within those notes? So when I send back the meeting notes, I need some type of feedback that, this is the area that I feel like we should focus on. So when I have those discussions, we can bring, those 3 top feedbacks or 5 feedback areas from that presentation that we want to focus on hard within our goal setting. So that's what I would say. We do have 7 minutes left. So I'll open up the floor for any more commentary. And then I'll tell you guys what we're going to be working on or presenting for next month.
Hey, Tori, I want to add a little bit of perspective also on the pre-brief sessions. I think that would be very helpful to get that, especially in a very complex presentations, because we have limited time. I do try to read the deck beforehand, but oftentimes, because of my lack of knowledge about a certain topic, pre-brief sessions would be very helpful. And perhaps getting a recommendation as Equity Advisory Committee, we all bring in different perspective. And so if they could help narrow down, for example, here's a part of the presentation where we would love to get kind of this diverse perspective on how we look at XYZ. So it gives us a little bit more targeted action on what we have to do or review. I myself, I like to reflect on information. I'm not very good in the moment. I like to really think about what does that mean? How is that potentially impact the different communities? So a little bit more preparation for myself. It's always better. So I just want to provide that perspective.
Yes. I love that.
Mhm.
And I want to ask this last question, right? Would you guys like, so you know how you get an email with everything on it, right? Are you interested in getting separate emails with a briefing and agenda items, or would you like that all compacted in one email? Or would you like to get an email in the beginning of the month and the end of the month, or before the presentation? Like, what does that process look like for you all? Like, how would you like to see information presented to you, so that I can make sure that we're presenting it effectively?
For myself, I mean, the information can be together with the presentation. What I know, and I know with timing, preparation, and everything, because you're getting the deck from the presenters, there might not always be enough time. But if we could get it a few days in advance, so we all are busy, right? But at least if we get it a few days in advance, we can really make a focus on spending time aside to review it before the actual meeting.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll go ahead and give the floor back to Carmen. I think this was a really good discussion today. We usually don't get to talk like this in the meeting. So I'm really happy that we have these discussions today. So yeah, I'll definitely follow up with the notes and everything from this discussion, specifically on the discussion questions. So thank you, and I'll hand it back over to Carmen.
All righty. Thank you again, Tori, for that presentation and for facilitating the discussion. That was our last agenda item. So we're now going to, before we adjourn, we'll open the floor up for brief announcements from committee members or staff. To ensure that everyone has an opportunity to speak, I ask again that you use the hand raise feature. Okay. So seeing that there are...
I have an announcement.
So
we are in the process of thinking of new co-chairs. So if you would like to be a co-chair, we do recruit every year. We're going to announce it next month when we get new members, so they'll have an opportunity as well. But I just want to get that percolating on your brains that we are in co-chair season. So if you like to be co-chair, please email us and let us know.
All right. Thank you, Tori. Are there any other announcements? All right. Seeing none, we'll proceed to adjournment.
I think we do have one.
Yeah. Yep. Go ahead, Astrid. My apologies.
No worries. Tori, a follow-up to your request. Would you be able to send all of us the description what co-chair responsibility consists of?
Yes, I can.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, are there any additional announcements? Third time's the charm. Seeing none, we'll proceed to adjournment. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So move.
And do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. We are now adjourned. We will approve our minutes from last meeting at the beginning of our next meeting due to time.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all for your time today.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Have a good night.
night.